Thanks so much to all my patrons. Join now to help support the channel and help pick the books I review on this channel. Link in the description. And I am done. Okay, so I just got done reading The Great Book of Amber. This is all of the Chronicles of Amber combined into one. There's 10 books there by Roger Zelazny. And I'm going to give you my unedited thoughts upon finishing this book, which was literally just right now. So, full disclosure, I did not read all 10 of these stories. I just finished the second of the 10. And I hate it. I'm going to be DNFing this. I'm going to give it a 1 star. And yeah, I don't like anything about this. And just the idea of pushing through for 8 more of these little books, it just drives me crazy. So each of these books are like 150 or so pages, maybe a little bit less. The Great Book of Amber has been combined into one huge book. It's like 1,400 pages or something like that. That's like the omnibus for all 10 of them. These stories were written back in the 70s and 80s. I think maybe a couple of them came out in the early 90s. Don't know exactly, but they're rather old books. And later on, they got packaged up into this big one. This was a book that's been sitting on my Patreon raffle wheel forever. This is one of the first books that was put on there. And I'm glad we finally got to it because the person who put it on there has been waiting forever. I just feel really bad that I just couldn't connect with it at all. It's literally the only books that I've liked that were published before 1980, which most of these were. Certainly the 2 that I just finished up were written well before the 80s. Whereas the Lord of the Rings books, and I've read quite a lot that I've tried, and it's just not for me. I don't really like older books, and I wish I did. I feel like it makes me kind of dumb for not liking it. I kind of judge myself quite a bit that the only kind of stuff I like is relatively more modern stuff like 1980s and beyond. But that's just, me recognizing what I like and what I don't like. But this book was worse than that. This book, I hated literally everything about it. Like, I can usually find something that I enjoyed out of a novel. Even one that I hate. Thinking off the top of my head, like the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin, I hated. It was one of the worst books that I've ever read, but there were aspects to that book that I enjoyed, and I talked about them in my review. And I like to be kind. I don't want to be rude, but I have really been racking my brain as I've been reading these 2 little books here, and I can't find anything, and that's frustrating to me. And so I'm going to sound a little bit ranty here, because I'm going to talk full spoilers, just full disclosure here. I know that's not normal here, but these books have been written so long ago, and I don't hear anybody clamoring to read these things anymore. Feels like that ship has passed. So I don't feel like I'm really going to be putting too many people out by talking spoilers here. And I'm certainly not going to be doing spoilers for the whole series, so I didn't read the whole series. Mostly, I'm going to try talking about the first book, because I feel like my thoughts about the first book symbolize all of my thoughts going into the next one as well, and I presume the ones after that. Now, maybe something turns around. Maybe I'd love it. I don't think so, though, because I hate fundamental things about this. So, yeah, these 10 books feel like little novellas, but they're novellas telling an epic fantasy story. And that epic fantasy story is a character that has amnesia, and that's how the book opens up. And I hate when books open up with a character with amnesia. I feel like when an author does this, what they're doing is they're giving a huge info dump while pretending that they're not giving an info dump. And that sucks. Now, some authors can do it the right way. Andy Weir recently did it with Project Hail Mary, where the character has amnesia. Half the story is told with this character has amnesia. The other half tells the story of him before he had amnesia. That's an interesting concept. But Andy Weir did not do the amnesia thing so that it could be an excuse for this character to talk to other people and find out about their past, so that the reader can actually find out about it as the main character's finding out about it. Andy Weir did it because it kind of made sense for the story, and it allowed a sense of mystery involved. But the character doesn't really talk to too many people in that book, if you know what I'm talking about. It's a kind of isolationist book where the character's kind of having internal thoughts. It worked a lot better. I also didn't like it there. It's one of my main complaints with that book, but I still loved it. But this one, it does it the wrong way. This one, it's literally a character just doesn't know anything, and he goes around talking to people and trying to figure out why he is in a situation and who he even is. And that sucks. I hate that. But perhaps what I hated more is most of this book, I'd say probably 2/3 of this book, is this main character waking up and getting mixed in with some pretty serious business. And we'll talk more about that in a moment, and mixed up in a fantasy world with royalty and shadow realms. And again, we'll talk more about it, but he does not want the other people in this book to know that he has amnesia. So he starts faking it. And these characters are talking to him, and he acts like he knows what they're talking about and gives these kind of cryptic answers to things. And the characters, not only are they fooled by what he's throwing down, but they think he's a genius for the way that he's giving answers. And that's a little too cute. And that's not the way the world works. And it made me constantly roll my eyes. Because what would actually happen is almost immediately, if you try to BS an expert, they're going to know it right away. And not only are they going to know it right away, but they're certainly not going to think, man, this guy is a genius. Oh my God, what? Man, he's on a different mental level than we are. That's not the way the world works. And it just constantly frustrated me to read this go on. It's like the author had this little hook and decided, let's make a book out of it. And that is crazy. So not only that, but this book is muddled to the sense of the ridiculous. So let's try to summarize things quickly here about the first book only. So there's these shadow realms, and there's one for every combination of possible things. So there's this huge amount of shadow realms. And there are these 9 princes, the main character is one of them, who jump between these realms. But there's really only one real realm, which is the Amber World. And all the 9 princes want to be the king, and they're fighting to become the king. And the shadow realms are just like these weird, dreamlike sequences without any meaning. It feels like a drug-induced haze, which I guess kind of makes sense for the early 1970s literature, when a lot of people were doing drugs, and drugs were kind of getting into the mainstream for the first time. But that didn't make it any more readable. It's just ludicrous for the sake of being ludicrous. I mean, there's a point in the early story where the character enters the Shadow Realm for the first time, and there's like dinosaurs walking around in modern world and weird stuff and people driving backwards, and it's like, it's not interesting. It is confusing and just odd. A lot of this book was just odd. And the plotting here is just strange. I mean, we have that really dumb amnesia stuff that I talked about. We have that really dumb, outsmarting everybody thing, which sucks. But the main character here just snaps into being an extremely hardcore badass and super capable, like leading armies and being so awesome. And he does this without retaining his memories. And it all happens within like 2 chapters of each other. Like, I'm not even joking. It felt like it was like 40 pages between the character having no idea who he is and all of a sudden being like, I got this. I can be, not only can I fool people, but I can just be literally in charge of everything. That's nuts and just not compelling. And then later on in the book, we found out that the princes can just like make their own perfect world, and every one of them can be the king of their own perfect world, which just ruins the entire premise of the entire fighting aspect of this book. Like, why do I care? Why does Matt care about the fighting anymore when I know that it's not important? When I know that it's meaningless, when the princes could just do the thing that they want to do. And it literally makes no sense. It's one of the many plot holes that were just littered throughout this thing, just laid out there, and I don't get it. The writing here, let's talk about the writing, because it is truly atrocious. Now, I get that this thing was written in the 70s, but this is no excuse. I'm under the opinion that people don't like necessarily get better at things as time goes on. They can learn from people's mistakes, but like the skill of people hasn't like gone up or down. It's people have capability, and this writing is truly bad. Like, it's on the level of very, very, very bad modern day authors. And for this guy to be on the top of it, I mean, this guy like won the Hugo. I think he won the Nebula. I mean, these are considered top tier science fiction. And that's bizarre. I mean, this thing is riddled with grammatical issues, which is bizarre for a book that clearly has multiple editions. Like, you'd think they'd go through at one point and just clean them all up, but I don't get it. It's so odd. It's like this book just needed an editor so very badly that did their job. I'm certain he had one. I mean, this was back before self-publishing, way before self-publishing was actually a mainstream thing. So everyone had an editor. How did this editor let all these things get through? It doesn't make any sense. And then beyond that, the author does one of the most infuriating things that I've ever read. The author jumps between this extremely formal speech, like thous and these, and it's very stuffy. But okay, that's a thing that exists. But then the same characters will then say these ridiculously casual, like 1970s, like hip slang all the time. It's straight up crazy. And you get these things like sentences back and forth. Like, pick a style and stick with it. But to jump between them, it boggles the mind on how the author thought this could be a compelling way to write a story. And the old 70s slang is silly and doesn't fit at all. But if it was just that, if it stuck with that, it would make at least some, like, flow to the story. But here it's just, I don't get it. Why? What was the author thinking? It's crazy. And then, like, later on in the book, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm ranting here, but, you know, it is what it is. I mean, so later on in the book, we get this battle sequence, and this is not hyperbole. It's hands down the worst battle sequence that I've ever read in my life. And I get that this isn't saying a lot, because, you know, battle sequences in fantasy can be very, very well done. If an author is not great at everything, usually they write a decent battle. I don't know why it is, but, you know, the average battle sequence I read is very well done. So, you know, to be the worst of that is not the worst crime in the world, but it's so far below the worst that it's nuts. I mean, the author starts basically every sentence with the word I, and it feels so stiff. And it almost put me to sleep in the middle of the afternoon. And I don't get tired in the middle of the afternoon, but I honestly just felt like I was getting sleepy. But the only thing keeping me up, that I was so frustrated and getting mad that it stimulated things in my brain to, like, keep me going. I mean, there's these sentences with words like, I hit this guy, I ran to this place, I saw 3 creatures die, I fled, you know, 500 of my people died, but we kept going. How about a little description? How about starting a sentence without the word I? How about explaining what's going on and showing me what's going on and not just telling me like a child would? Like, I didn't get any reasoning for anything happening. Like, I love this at times. There's certain fantasy series that can do that to perfection. I mean, hell, my favorite series is 𝐬𝐻𝐿. And 𝐬𝐻𝐿 does that constantly. It drops you in, it doesn't explain things, and you figure it out as you go along. But here, it's just hand-waved. In 𝐬𝐻𝐿, it's explained, and it makes sense why it was told that way. Here, it's like, there's so many lingering questions. Why are the princes so strong? What allows them to have their powers? Why can they do some powers in some situations and some powers not able to be doing them in others? And the author essentially just answers these questions with, they can because they can. Cool, I guess. That doesn't make me feel like I comprehended what went on. That doesn't answer things. Saying, like, they did it because they can, which is almost word for word what happens in this book, is crazy. And these non-answers we get just mean that we constantly get Deus Ex Machina. And that sucks. That's one of the least favorite things that I read in any kind of fantasy story. And it's just constant here. And in the end, you know, I just felt like I was reading the literary version of a really, really, really cheesy 1970s movie. And I'm not saying that with any sort of nostalgia. That's not a good thing to be what this is about. There's great movies that were filmed in the 70s. Some of the greatest movies of all time were filmed in the 70s. There's also a lot of trash. This felt like one of the trash, you know? And I gotta slow down. Calm down. Breathe, Matt. The characters. Let's talk about the characters. Because they lacked every sense of personality. Nothing made them unique. It just all felt like shades of the same exact person. And it just lost any sort of compelling reason to keep going on in the story. I mean, the story just jumps from event to event without getting any kind of emotion from the characters involved. If I don't care about any of the characters, especially the main character, why should I care what happens to them? Or the plot for that matter, or this book for that matter? You gotta make me care. And it doesn't mean, when I say care, I don't mean like I have to like them. Maybe the care is I dislike them, but I just don't have any feeling for them at all. And that's horrible. And the story somehow achieved something I did not think possible. It felt rushed. It felt extremely rushed. But simultaneously, it felt slow and boring. How is that possible? Like, I guess I should give the author credit here for that, but that's not a good thing that he achieved here. But it is impressive in a bad way to take somehow both sides of things that should be diametric opposites. Good job, Zelazny. So I've talked a lot about in the past on this channel how I could never write a fantasy book. And I've talked a lot about how even the worst of the authors that I've ever read would be far, far better than me. I feel that way. But there's an exception now. Because the sad thing is, I honestly felt like this is something that I would have written as a child. It felt like, and I'm not talking like a 16-year-old child. I'm talking like a 12-year-old, like 12, 13, like before high school. That's the quality here. And like, look, I get it if you love this thing. And, this thing is not made for me. I don't like the amnesia stuff. I don't like modern day plots weaved into my stories normally. I don't normally love science fiction. I don't like older stories. So all of these, like, why would I like this? Maybe you like all those things, in which case, great. I suspect that most people that like this read it a long time ago, and nostalgia holds true because, and when I say nostalgia holds true, I'm not like castigating anybody about that. Like, nostalgia holds true for me as well. I mean, some of my favorite video games of all time were games that were made a very long time ago that if played today would probably be not even close to the best kind of stuff coming out. But I still look at it so fondly, and I still think of it as the best. I mean, 𝐒𝐻 of Time, one of my all-time favorite games. It's probably about unplayable nowadays, but I still think of it as one of the best games of all time. So you may think that here, but that doesn't mean it's great or great for everybody. Maybe it's great for you, certainly not for me. So yeah, I'm not recommending this thing to anybody. This is a chore, and I'm sad that I had to push through it. I'm glad it's off my list though, and I'm really sorry for the person that recommended this to me. I'm not saying anything negative about you. It's just not for me. Maybe this thing's great, and I'm just not seeing the brilliance in it. But that's just where I am. That's all I can do on my channel is just talk about my own feelings. So that is it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, happy reading to you. Thanks again to all my patrons, with a special shout out to my Ascendant tier and Librarian tier patrons: Anna G, CJ, Doust, Darren, JD, Jonathan, Nathan T, Nev's Book Channel, 𝗏𝗏𝗏, Ron Reich, Russell, Ryan L, Sydney Baker, 𝗏𝘗, Tahir, Tommy Rose, Zion, Anna, Andra, Blair, Brock, Evan, Joe UK, Kat Mick, Michael Sugarman, Sky, Tyler, and 𝗏𝗏𝗏. Thanks for sticking to the end of this video, and if you want to watch some more content from my channel, click over here and I've got some good videos for you. Thanks so much.